Hello, my name is Mark, and you are listening to Cutouts.
All these things you get your way and never show. Tighten up, go another day. I get so low, and when it comes to stay, changing all your ways, connection to a place you just don't need 'em. And if it feels alright, alone with me tonight, direction isn't quite the way you see 'em. Oh, I could go and tell them so, but all your friends, they just don't grow. And if it's true, I speak to you, but all the time I'm sleeping, so I need you now, I need you now. Make it out to shine, it's always them, it's never mine. Calling off some truths, and if you're me, you just get used. And when it comes to stay, changing all your ways, connection to a phrase you just don't need 'em. And if it feels alright, alone with me tonight, direction isn't quite the way you see 'em. Oh, I could go and tell them so, but all your friends, they just don't grow. And if it's true, I speak to you, but all the time I'm sleeping, so I need you now, I need you now.
Welcome to Cutouts. My name is Mark, and on this episode, we'll be talking with Rocco from the band New Speedway about their first release, Feel It, from 2011. I enjoy all the conversations that I have with all the bands that I have on the podcast. They're informative, they're fun, they're just, it's good. I like what I do. But every once in a while, I get into the weeds with someone, and it's not an interview anymore. It's a conversation. It's us talking about the things that make us musicians. It's two musicians talking about music, and that's what this kind of turns into. And I love it. I love conversations like that. We talk about, we talk about the record, we talk about the band, we talk about influences, we talk about recording, all the regular stuff. But we really kind of dig deep into what makes musicians or artists. And I really appreciate that this is the kind of conversation that Rocco and I had. That it was elevated a little bit in the way that we were talking just about how things are and things were. And I really love conversations like that. So let's get into it. I would like to welcome Rocco to the podcast. How are you doing, Rocco?
I'm doing okay. How are you, Mark?
I'm well, thank you. We are discussing your first album, EP. It's only 6 songs, so it's on the cusp of what an album and or EP is. But we're going to be discussing New Speedway and the first album, which is Feel It from 2011. I would like to touch on a few things before this.
Sure.
And I guess I could talk about it later, but I picked this up at a record shop in Philadelphia. Where did I pick this up? Doesn't I say? Philadelphia Record Exchange. I picked this up at the Philadelphia Record Exchange in Philadelphia. You ready?
I'm ready.
$4.
Wow, you were robbed. You got scammed, sucker.
I did not, because I get home and I put this on the table and it is fantastic. And we'll get into your influences on this record later, and I'll tell you what I think you sound like. But this record, 6 songs, blew me away. 3 songs on side 1, 3 songs on side 2, and I was in from the start. What's interesting is you and I have been kind of texting back and forth, and you sent me some other stuff, and you're like, hey, you should check out this, and you should check out this. I listened to other New Speedway stuff. You're a bit of a chameleon, Rocco. You're kind of all over the place. Not within an album. This album sounds like it's a very cohesive album. And I actually wrote this down. You look at stuff like Nature Church from 2019 and Climb Sideways from 2020. Those are very self-contained albums, but they're completely different from this one, and they're completely different from each other. And it's almost like you come to a new project with I'm going to make this album, and you make that album. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm except for this first album that we're talking about. Everything else is just me. And then sometimes I'll have a friend or two come in. One of my records my sister sings on or whatever, but it's just me doing all the parts. And I grew up listening to Beatles records, and when you listen to like any Beatle record, really, but you take a record like the White Album or something, you've got 3 guys, maybe 4, but really 3 guys writing very, very different kinds of songs and trying to make them all work together. But, you've got Lennon's voice, and it's very different than McCartney's voice, and it's pretty different than George Harrison's voice. And I guess in a way, it's like that's something you get from a collaborative effort, is different people's personalities and styles coming through. When you're just you and you are influenced by a lot of things, at least for me, it was like, well, why not? Why not if you want to make something completely different than the last record? And I'm glad you sort of pointed that out. I try to have records. I like the idea of an album being a thing. It exists from front to back like a book or whatever. And then the disassociation from the album before it to the album next to it, some people aren't comfortable with. They want to build a house sound, and they want any people who become fans to not be, put off by or alienated from what they enjoyed the first time. And I don't really care about that. I'm interested in making a record as like a formed piece of art in a way, if that's not pretentious.
No, I get it. And you do album to album. Like I said, everything is like a self-contained piece of it's a self-contained work of art. But if I played this album and then I played something like Nature Church, 2 completely different sounds, but I can still hear your writing in both those albums. You're not so far removed from your writing style. It's how you get that music out to the world, because that is a very synth heavy
Yeah.
soundscape kind of. It's almost like a Vangelis record, the way it just kind of is a soundscape made with synths, as opposed to this. I'm just going to go right ahead and say, Feel It. To me, we'll get into influences in a second. To me, it sounded like the perfect blend of power pop and shoegaze. 2011. It's got both those things going on. Not a synth in sight, which you do on a lot of later records, but it's just it's a jangle pop record. But then it's got that dreamscape of the shoegaze underneath it. So you had mentioned that this is something that this is you and a bunch of people, as opposed to you doing everything. You're very, it's from what I've been reading, a little bedroom centric, and I mean that in that it's just you, whether it's actually done in a bedroom or done in a studio. It's you take your time on things. It's not like there's a timeline. You kind of do what you want to do when you want to do it, because it's really just you. But for Feel It, you had a band. You had Jonathan on harmony rockets. Don't know what that is. Daniel on bass and Joseph on drums. This was recorded at Inciting HQ, Room 6 in beautiful Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So this is a band. You wrote all the music, obviously.
That's right.
And then you brought it to the studio with friends and said, hey, this is the vision. But it was never really a band, was it? It was still just you.
No, well, yes and no. So the band that I was in that was my band for 10 years prior to New Speedway, was called Elevator Parade. And we were sort of a very 60s retro kind of throwback in a lot of ways. We share a lot of friends and colleagues with like Elephant Six bands and stuff like that. And Elevator Parade was like a 10-year long sort of, project. And as that started to end, but there was a live band, we toured, we did band things. And I was getting tired of sort of a retro, for lack of better words, a retro sound. And I wanted to move into making things that highlighted or borrowed from the interests in music that I had that were much more modern. And to say modern at that point is still weird, because it's clearly like the late 80s, early 90s, as opposed to the late 60s, early 70s. And it just didn't feel right to maintain that old band name. It felt right to do something fresh and completely different. And so the name New Speedway was initially a placeholder that just kind of stuck. But Joe Boyle, Dan Petrino were members of the band Elevator Parade, and we had played together for many, many, many years. And so it was just a few members of that last version of Elevator Parade, and we were sort of three left. John Allen, who at the time was sort of like my inseparable best friend and a brilliant musician in his own right, still to this day. He was in a group called The Music for Headphones. Incredible band. You should check that out. But he's just such a technically adept engineer as well. And he had this studio. And he was like, why don't we all... I said, do you want to play guitar in this new thing? He said, nah, yeah, sure, I'll help out. And he said, well, do you want to do a record like you normally do? Or I said, no, let's do it as a band. Like, let's get... And the original title of the record, the working title of Feel It, was Violence. And we had this whiteboard in the studio. And like day one, I walked in, and I grabbed this blue marker, and I just wrote the word, just big and blue on the thing. It said violence. And everybody's like, what's with this? And I said, I was thinking about the term violence, and like how it, in my mind, it had many more connotations than just like physical assault or something like that. And we just made it a practice to whatever instrument we were playing to get the most violence out of a performance personally. And we took that over to the engineering sound. If things were going in the red, maybe where they shouldn't have, we were very okay with that. We wanted everything to just kind of be, not sound like a sloppy pile of shit, but to be on the edge of, I don't know, let's find out what kind of violence is inside this compressor.
It's a very guided
And
by voices way of looking at things to some degree.
I mean, that's you hit the nail on the head. Those are Bob Paulo, Toby Sprout. Come on, man,
Yeah.
can't beat those guys.
So this is 2011. You
Yeah.
you go into the studio. You kind of knock this out, and you release it on vinyl. This is your only vinyl.
From New Speedway, yes.
Okay, so because you have other albums, and I find them all over Spotify, and I've listened to them. Obviously, we were talking about other albums that you did, but this is the only vinyl. So it's almost like, because I'm looking for vinyl for the podcast,
Sure.
this was serendipitous that I was able to find this on an overnight trip to Philadelphia. I went up to see a couple bands, and I'm from Baltimore, and I come back and with this record, and I put it on, and fantastic. And right from the start, it has that shoegaze sound, but then you kind of morph into other stuff. It's not violent in the word that people might actually be thinking of when you say violence, but I understand what you're saying in that it's certainly noisy, not in a bad way. I'm a big fan of shoegaze, but it's got that noisy, and you're pushing limits, and I think that's great.
I think we sort of deduced that violence, where we liked the idea of it, was that violence in general is by nature irrational and unpredictable. And so this unpredictability of playing together in this room and turning things up really loud, like what would it sound like? And that's what it sounds like.
But you had the music. You had the music written, right? Like you guys practiced as a band, and you knew what was going on. But that was just the music part of it. The actual recording part of it is you going in there and pushing boundaries on this compressor or that reverb or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Love it. So you were Violence, but you weren't, because now you're New Speedway as a band. And how did that name come to be? So
there's a Grateful Dead tune called the New Speedway Boogie.
And I was actually...
And it's...
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I like the Dead. As much as, I'm not supposed to, because I came up in a pedigree of punk rock, so you're not supposed to like the Grateful Dead, but I do.
I'm right there with you. I saw them live in like 91, but at the same time, I think I went and saw the Jesus and Mary Chain like 2 weeks later. So I get what you're saying.
The New Speedway Boogie, that song is about Altamont, and Altamont obviously is seen as this violent end of the 60s. The hippie love and dream of Woodstock and the Monterey Pop Festival all came crashing down with the Hells Angels and pool cues and, and I thought, well, if I'm ending this 60s retro style band in favor of something more modern and maybe darker, what better? What ended the original 60s love and all that? Altamont. And I was listening to the New Speedway Boogie one day, and I said, perfect.
Well, perfect. I don't even think the Dead played that show. Didn't they? Weren't they booked? And they get there, and Hell's Angels are security, and they're just like, yeah, we're out of here. Something along those lines.
No, because they were Palo Alto cowardice hippies. But cowardly hippies. But they wrote a good song about it. Yeah. And I just thought, oh, well, that's sort of, not ironic, but like sort of the profundity of them doing that and me being like, oh, well, I can't think of anything better right now. And then I never did.
I want to go over your influences for this record. Being the first record, again, I think your writing from album to album is similar. As a guy who plays synths and as a guy who grew up with punk, I can hear that the writing is very similar, even though you're using different instruments to convey the sound you want to album to album. But this is your first, and this is what I came up with. My Bloody Valentine, Kevin Shields and Matthew Sweet get together, and they write music, and then ask Jay from Dinosaur Jr. to come in and play all the solos. That's exactly what this sounds like to me.
Yeah. They asked Jay from Dinosaur to come in, and they asked Blue to come in and play bass.
So what are your influences?
My influences, we could have a whole other podcast episode about a lot of that, but I'll stay on track.
I appreciate that.
That's really on the nose. For that time and that record and that early Speedway being a band, like, Dinosaur and Sonic Youth, big time. big time. Kevin Shields, of course. I mean, My Bloody Valentine, it goes without saying. Jesus and Mary Chain as well. And at the time, because that was like, we recorded that in 2010. And like at the time, there were like newer bands that I was really getting into, like The Place to Bury Strangers, stuff like that. Just finding these bands that were, flying this flag of like heavily distorted, fuzzed out music that felt, it felt good. And Matthew Sweet, I mean, I have every Matthew Sweet record I've ever been able to get my hands on. I mean, the guy, just a brilliant songwriter and another real person who was able to communicate like a 60s pop sensibility but then make it, bring it into like a modern 90s guitar rock kind of thing. So,
well, and that was
dead on.
That was very prevalent in the early 90s, where you had Stone Roses and you had these bands that were just taking 20 years earlier, the late 60s, early 70s, and completely just transforming it into this new sound, which wasn't really that new. It was just power pop revisited. But Matthew Sweet did a great job. And it's funny because you listen to songs. Of course, I don't have the songs I'm talking about. You look at something like Tighten Up the Bow or Silver Metal. Silver Metal, who wrote that? Bob Mould, Matthew Sweet? Who wrote that song? Because it's so pop-centric. And then you go to the next song, which is just now another shoegaze rager. So it's just very interesting. This album, and you actually said to me, we were texting, and you're like, I have other albums. We can talk about other albums, more recent albums. You just came out with a single earlier this month, as of beginning of 2026, and I was like, yeah, but you know what? This is the one that hit me. I brought it home, and I heard it, and it hit me, and I listened to other stuff, and it's good, and I like it, but this is the one where I was like, Silver Metal should have been, an MTV staple, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you said Bob Mould. I mean, I was listening to Black Sheets of Rain 2 days ago. I mean, that guy's work, whether it's Husker Du or solo, Sugar. I mean, Sugar in the 90s. I mean, that kind of stuff, not that kind of stuff, but that stuff, it never leaves my headphones. It started entering my ears in the 80s or the early 90s. And I've never stopped listening to it.
No,
I listen to tons and tons of new music, but flip a coin, it's going to wind up landing on something like Sebadoh or Husker Du or Dinosaur, or Sonic Youth, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And My Bloody Valentine and bands like Ride and stuff like that. That whole the British wave of, we could call it shoegaze or dream pop or whatever. And I love all that stuff. And so, that first record is very, very pointed in that direction.
And you do a lot with it in 6 songs. I mean, you have other albums that are like 12 songs, but you packed a lot into 3 songs per side on this record.
Well, there were 10 tunes total.
Oh, that's right. You told me about this.
Yeah, we cut 10 songs. Well, we cut more, but there were 10 songs that felt like they were going to be this record. And pretty early on, it was I had my mind set on, no, I want to release this on a limited press of vinyl. It was expensive, but and I wanted that manifestation of that thing, because I had released things on CD in my life, but I had never released anything on a record. And so it was very important. And of course, as you know, a record just has time constraints that mediums, even tapes are longer than records. And so it was like, okay, well, that's not going to work out because it's going to go well over the 40 minutes or 42 minutes. And so then it was decided that one would be Feel It, the next one would be Action, one would be an LP, if we could call it that, at 6 tracks, and then the next one would be an EP. So maybe they're 2 sister EPs, or maybe one's an L and one's an E. I don't know.
Well,
but
I listened to Action. You mentioned this to me like a week or 2 ago about how, again, we were texting and you're like, well, Action's the other half of this record. And I was like, oh. So I listened to Action. It sounds just like this record. I mean, again, your other albums sound different. Obviously, this came from the same recording session. As soon as you hit Keeps On Moving, good Lord. If that's not... Did Matthew Sweet come over to your house and say, here, I have a song for you? Seriously.
I wish.
It sounds so power pop, and it's such a great way that I can totally hear that this is just the continuation of the Feel It album.
Funny story. Matthew Sweet borrowed my acoustic guitar once to do a record in store at Tower. I used to work at Tower Records.
Fantastic.
I'm really showing how old I am without saying how
that's
old
where
I
I bought half my stuff. Yes, I get it.
Yeah. And I was off of work one day, and my girlfriend at the time was she was in charge of all the live shows, and she called the house, and I picked up the phone, and she was like, Matthew Sweet needs to borrow a guitar. I said, okay, well, what kind of guitar? She's like, an acoustic guitar. I was like, I have this old Gibson Hummingbird. She was like, cool, get in a cab right now and bring it up here. And he played. I don't know why he needed, I still don't to this day. I don't know why he needed a guitar, but he did. And it was cool. He played my guitar.
Did he sign it?
Absolutely. I would never want somebody to sign my guitar. Oh my, no. But he was very, very nice. And he bought us dinner.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about this artwork. I have this, I go to a record store and I say, okay, this is $4. Also, I just want to mention, I have number 42 of 500.
I did all the handwriting on this.
pretty low number on that. I'm very happy.
Yeah.
I go into a record store and I say, hey, love this record. This looks interesting. It's $4. How can you go wrong for $4? I'll buy anything for $5 or less. And I look it up on Discogs just to see, not what it's going for, but just to see what kind. I don't want to be buying, opera. Not that I don't dislike opera.
Right.
But it's not my speed. So
I wouldn't either.
I wouldn't want to buy an opera record for $4 when I could buy, a power pop shoegaze record for $4. So I look and I say, this is whatever it said, punk, power pop, and I was like, yep, right on my alley. $4 can't go wrong. So I bought it, and there's always that surprise because I've bought records for more than that, for $10, and I get it home and I'm like, well, this isn't my speed, and that's okay. It might say punk or new wave or power pop or synth pop, whatever I'm into, but it doesn't hit me the way an album like this hit me, and you're just kind of like, this just sounds like Matthew Sweet and Kevin Shields just wrote a record. Tell me a little bit about this cover. I also have a question real quick. Did you handwrite this part as well?
Yeah, that is my handwriting.
So it's interesting. You actually have a record here that is just a picture, and you can tell me what this is a picture of, against a black background, and then you hand wrote New Speedway at the top and Feel It at the bottom on all 500 of these records?
Oh, no. We transferred my handwriting into a font.
Okay.
And then sent it to be pressed.
Because
I didn't write
the numbers are your handwriting.
That's a little like silver Sharpie marker.
Okay.
That I did each one of those. But no, the handwriting font is, we just created that.
So tell me how this came to be. Picture someone took. Tell me how this happened.
It's a good question, and I'm going to answer this to the best of my ability. And if I'm wrong, I'm sure he'll let me know after he listens to it.
Okay.
But I know the cover photo was taken by Joe Boyle, who played drums in the band at the time. And to my knowledge, and damn it, I should have done my homework. I should have called Joe and asked him, because I should have anticipated that question. I think it is a very close-up photo taken by a camera, not even a phone cam, like an actual physical camera of an old metal sink in a basement that had corroded or eroded, I don't know, that oxidized or whatever, to that color green. It was just, Joe would just take these random photos. He might have even been like renovating a house that he had just bought. He bought a house then. So I don't know precisely where that sink or wash basin was, but it was metal that had turned into that color, and it just looked fantastic. And I was like, well, that's it. And that's why the LP inside is green. I mean, just to
beautiful
kind of go
LP. But here's the thing: if you had given me a million guesses, corroded sink would not be on the list.
Me neither. I remember being sort of incredulous to the idea that that's what it was. And then the back photo was taken by my friend Angel Freeling. I don't know. I said, like, I wanted the contrast of the front being kind of like dark and weird and whatever, but then on the other side, on the back, I wanted something pretty. And it was just I it was a picture she sent me once of like, look at these pretty flowers or whatever. And I was like, cool. And I just happened to still have it. I was like, well, there's the juxtapose of grimy and then pretty.
Right. But it's a dark photo though. The back photo is a bit of a, at least against the black background, is a bit of a grayish, darkish gray going on.
Shake it off, you will completely. One last time, I hope it's true. Taking notes on how you treat me. It's amazing what you do. Now I'll take it out on you. Feel the words push right through. My silver medal, my silver medal. My goal has been on for so long. I can't believe I write this song. Turning around, it makes you shallow. But the shoe fits oh so well. Words and pictures seem so hollow. It's a lie you just can't sell. Now I feel this all alone. When I try to walk you home. My silver medal, my silver medal. My goal's been gone for so long. I can't believe I write this song.
you write all the music, and you have been writing all the music for all the new Speedway and your solo stuff. You have some solo stuff as well. This is the first album and the last album that you've had a band. I'm just curious, all the other albums, not that we're necessarily talking about them, but again, we have touched on them. How are those getting recorded? Is it at a studio? Is it in your basement? Is it?
Most of them have been done in my bedroom, wherever I happened to live at the time. I have pretty primitive. Nowadays, I've gotten into recording with computers, but that's very, very recently. It's only in the last like 2 records or whatever, 3 records. But for most of it, I was recording on reel-to-reel tape machines for a long time, and
That's awesome.
when those sort of became harder to get tape and harder to maintain, and I'm not, my vocation is fixing guitars, but not electronics, and so I then shifted over. There was this real big push in the late '90s, early 2000s for these self-contained digital recorders.
Yeah, like ADAT,
That were
and not even that, but the Tascam
prior to
HT24s and things like that.
not even the rack unit ones, like the ones that were all in one that had faders, like a Tascam 4-track, but they were digital.
Oh, I have one of those floating around.
Yeah, and I don't know. The whole thing of like at the time, I think you could only buy Pro Tools, and you had to be in a studio. And then when Pro Tools started to come out for home stuff, it was prohibitively expensive, and
your computer needed to be able to run it, which was prohibitively expensive.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't afford it. So I found used, it's made by Korg. I mean, but it could have been anybody, Tascam or Akai. They all made them. But the one I used was a Korg. It's called the D3200. And it had digital, there's no tape involved, 32 tracks. It's got built-in effects and everything like that. And it functioned like my old 8-track machine and, mixing boards that I had used. And it just took some getting used to, but it was affordable because everyone was moving over to laptops and Pro Tools, and
Right.
I just didn't want to. It made more sense, and it felt more like I could get things done quickly without having to consistently up some sort of game with a learning curve.
Well, you also
I just wanted to make music
you knew your way around faders. You knew your way around recording in that regard. So you're
in an analog sense. I did, yeah.
so I feel it's the first album. Action comes
Mhm.
later as an EP. And again, Super Crush's Die Hard is 2012. That's on an 8-track reel-to-reel is what you're telling me.
That one, yes, and that was done. That was done in a basement of a friend of mine. Owned a little shop and had this giant basement. And I was like, "Can I build a little studio in here for this record?" And she said, "Yeah." So that's where I cut that one by myself in the winter of 2012.
That's great. I have, just right off camera, I have I don't know what it's called, DPO2, some Tascam 8-channel, 2-in, and it just sits there, and it does nothing. I bought it for $20 at an estate sale, and it's perfect
You
working
should use
condition.
it.
I should. So you're inspiring me to not be using Logic. The Logic is how I edit the podcast because it's easy just to shift things around and get this, that, and the other in there. But maybe I should do that. Maybe that's what I do this year is take I have an old Tascam 4-track. I have like a Porta 5, but I should actually just go on that 8-track and I should just make, I've got compressors, I've got reverbs, I've got all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
I should just write an EP.
Yeah, I mean, look at Martin Newell. I mean, Cleaners from Venus. That's all he uses. I think he uses a DPO2.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's in his living room, outside of London or whatever. But like, that guy went from using a Tascam like 424 to just using that, and he's never felt the need to upgrade or
if
whatever.
you know your way around it. It's still digital.
Yeah,
that's great.
And so it's like, I don't know. I use Ableton now, and it frustrates me more than anything else. But I still have my old 3200 machine. I have 2 of them just in case one breaks because I love it so much.
Well, and that's just it. Is I really haven't used this Tascam 8-track, but the when I was in high school in the 80s, all it was Porta 1s and Porta 7s and Porta 5s, and that's exactly what we used. And I miss it. You're in Logic and it does what it's supposed to do. It makes the podcast hella easy, But at the same time, just the fact that we were able as kids to go back there with a 4-track and record an entire band, it was nuts.
Yeah, I had an original Tascam Porta 1, and then I've had several Tascam 4-tracks, and I had a Yamaha 8-track cassette recorder, and then I moved over to a reel-to-reel that was the 388, which was the flatbed
Love the 388.
Tascam. I shouldn't have sold it.
It almost
sold
looks
it
like the cassette that goes in there, but it's reel to reel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I bought it for $300. I sold it for like $500, and now they cost $5,000. So I mean, hindsight 2020, but yeah, I mean, I went through pretty much everything you could do as far as back then, looking in the classifieds for what someone was selling, and I'd get it home and go, there's no internet. I mean, and just be like, okay, how do I use this? And then talk to friends who maybe worked in a studio and just sort of learned as I went. But that learning curve seemed much more gentle to me than a computer and, processing and stuff.
Well, and I've always said the computer to me is too much. Like I can download. I have synthesizers. I've got 20 synthesizers sitting around the studio here because that's what I'm a piano player. I love the synthesizers. I was a big, the Depeche Mode and OMD of the 80s sustained me.
Nice.
But it's one of those things where I could easily sell all this and put it in a computer and have a Jupiter 8 and have a Prophet 5, but I don't. I'm still using hardware because there's nothing quite like that tactile feeling of turning a knob and pressing a key. And I get it. Moving a fader and pressing record on an 8-track or a 4-track or whatever the case may be. I just find it fascinating that you record this album in a I don't know if it was an actual studio, room 6 was an actual...
It was a rehearsal space.
Okay, rehearsal space. So you were recording that on your 8-track as well, or was that recorded?
No. So that one was, I didn't touch a thing when it came to the cutting part of it and the engineering. That was all Jonathan Allen. And I trust him implicitly with getting sounds. I mean, an amazing musician, an amazing writer, but one of the most technically, especially at the time, most technically adept people I had ever met. And he was just like, don't worry about it. He was like, focus on just playing for this one. And so his parts were overdubbed in because he was really manning the decks when the three of us were playing most of the songs. So a lot of it's live in studio, sort of, but there's also a lot of overdubs. And so John would put his stuff down afterwards. So he did all the cutting, and then he and I mixed it together in about a week.
Yeah, and you're also listed here as a producer as well as a mixer on here, on Feel It. I just find it fascinating that after that, it's like, okay, it's just me in the bedroom with whatever it is I'm recording with, and that's how we do things. And I find that fascinating, that especially listening to some of these. I mean, again, there's a lot of synth-heavy stuff where even when you're playing guitar, you can tell there's a drum machine in the background, a very automatic era Jesus and Mary chain, where it's a drum machine behind just wall of guitars on Action especially. But I just find that fascinating. That's how this was recorded, and then after that, it's kind of like, well, I'm on my own.
Well, the drum machines became a necessity because I live in an apartment, you know. So my first instrument's drums. I mean, I went to school to play drums and stuff, and it was a little bit of a, going forward in future albums. Although all the drums on Super Crushes Die Hard, because I had a studio built out in the basement, those are real, and that's me playing drums. But after that, it becomes almost solely drum machine because I didn't have anywhere to play, and I good fences make good neighbors, and
I get it. And as a guy,
I love drum machines.
So
Don't
do
get me
I.
wrong. I love them.
I've got 5 or 6 lying around here, but yes, and the sampler. I mean, that's the nice thing is that as much as I don't want to use a computer to make music, I do. But I've also got samplers, and I can sample. I go to a friend's house and sample his drums and bring them back in, and now I've got a brand new drum kit on my sampler. Not even looking at a computer.
I have an MPC, and I have 2 Roland 404s. I adore them.
Which MPC do you have?
I have a newer one of the new computery ones.
Oh no!
I used to have a 1000 for a long time. I had an MPC 1000. I never had any of the big boy ones like the MPC 60 or
Neither
the
did I.
2500.
But I have a 2000 XL sitting to my right, and I've had that for. I've had a 2000. I've had either a 2000 or a 2000 XL for at least 2 decades. I mean, they are just rock solid center of my studios.
I like them for sequencing, but I much prefer, again, I don't, it's not a conscious effort for me to take the hard way to do things, but when it comes to actually sampling something and like chopping it and lining it up, I do it way better and faster by ear on the Roland 404.
Okay.
Which is so
very popular.
But it's technically dog shit compared to what an MPC can do. But I don't know. There's something about how I can sit there and just sort of, yeah, it is. And it's intuitive. To me, a piece of gear, whatever it is, has to be intuitive or else I won't learn it because I'm just not, I'm a nerd in some ways and I read manuals and stuff like that. But I still, we all have limits to what we are not just able to do, but willing to do.
I was just thinking about how the last 10 minutes of this conversation we've just lost everybody.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
No, I'm okay with that. I'll talk shop all day. I have no problem.
I mean, you started this conversation with every record you make sounds very, very different.
But it does.
Like, I have no problem alienating listeners. So why would that be any different in an interview?
But you don't, because I was listening to just the other day, and I can't remember the name of it because I don't own it. And I was listening to Nature Church 2019 in the car the other day on the way to work. And I was just kind of getting a feel because we had this interview coming up, and I was just had to get the feel for it. And I'm just like, his writing style hasn't really changed. It's the way he's creating what he's doing is what's changed. So if someone likes this album or that album, they'll like other albums if they can get through the fact that you are taking a chance. You're just making something completely different with who you are as a musician. You're using different synthesizers or whatever the case may be.
I think that's important because when you say you're taking a chance, I think one, the songwriting doesn't really change, but the presentation of it does. I think if you're a solo person, or not, let me stop and start that again. For me, as a solo artist, I don't presume to know what anybody else should do. But for me, if you're going to be just some dude in a bedroom doing everything by yourself, there's this very masturbatory sort of element to that. And it can get very, I don't know, a little one-sided or whatever. So the taking chances thing is twofold. One, you got to kind of use I'm using air quotes, studio to be another member and to flesh out sort of something that's more than yourself because you are only one person. And then on the other hand, taking chances is very easy when you have no delusions of success. Like when you're not deluded in any way that this could potentially make or break you, or you will be the next insert popular indie artist here. I think taking the chances becomes easier or less worrisome because you're like, well, why wouldn't you? Who are you holding back to impress or for? It doesn't make any sense to me why anybody would.
That is fascinating, and I'll use myself as the analogy. I mean, I've been in a bunch of bands that never went anywhere, never did anything, and this podcast is very much a vanity project. I mean, I'm finding a record from 15 years ago in a record store in Philadelphia, and I contact you and say, hey, you want to be on the show? And you're like, yep. And there you go. And who's heard of you? I don't mean that in a bad way, but
I don't take it in a bad way.
But that's what I'm saying. It's not like I'm calling up Dave Grohl. It's like, hey, let's talk about your Nirvana days or your Scream days. I'm not going back to that point. It's you have a prolific body of work. I mean, you've got 5 or 6 albums here, a number of EPs, and you do it for you. And that's the most important part because I do this podcast for me. You want to listen? Right. Great. You want to join the conversation? Fantastic. If you don't, I'm okay with that. I'm discovering new music and I'm talking to people about the records that they put out. And this will never blow up. and I'm totally okay with that. I'm up against movie stars and musicians. I'm glad Billy Corgan has his own podcast now, but I can't compete with that level of success. And you want to make a podcast? Make a podcast. Or Jason Bateman has a podcast. I can't compete with that. So this is that I'm right there with you. This is you do it for you, and you enjoy what you do. And if you're there for the delusion of grandeur, if you're there to become the next big thing, you're in for a world of hurt.
And I think also, yeah, exactly. I mean, I did that in my 20s with the band prior to Speedway. Like I said, we played a lot of shows. We played tours. We put out records and stuff. And at that time, that was a goal. And then, you sort of come back down to earth, and we had gotten notoriety, and we had made some quote unquote indie important friends, but it didn't happen for me. I didn't become the Neutral Milk Hotel, even though I had friends who were in that band. And like, I didn't become that. And that's okay. Like when you're younger, I think you're a little embittered by it. And then as you get older, you start to realize, no, that's okay. This is not why you started doing it. Just because you thought maybe you could, because you saw your colleagues and your friends, hitting those markers that you put in your own head. You made them, or the industry invented them. They're not real. But, and then you just realize, well, I'm not going to stop.
No.
But I think that's when ultimately your music, or whatever medium you use, an artist, or even technical people who invent shit or whatever.
Yeah.
They don't, if it's really in you and it's just something like, I don't know how to do anything else. I'm very bad at most things. So it's like, I'm going to do this one way or another. But there is some sort of like, that's, I have to put a mirror on myself and call a little bullshit on that, because if, you really didn't care about whatever, you wouldn't release it. You're always seeking some sort of validation. I mean, that sounds negative. It's not meant to, but if you're releasing it to the public, then you do want someone to hear it. You do seek some sort of affirmation or whatever. And it's not yours anymore once it's out there, but you put it out there. So something in you still wants people to go, I like that.
I completely agree. Fantastic. I talk to different bands, and I talk to them about the records they put out. And every once in a while, I'll have an interview like this. I'll have a conversation with an artist. And it's almost like we haven't talked about the record in a while. It's really about just what's going on in the world of music for you, for me, for everybody. And I cherish those conversations, because I don't think that people hear that enough. Hear that, it needs to be for you. It needs to, you're making it, you're putting it out, it flops. Okay. You keep going. You keep going.
Just make another record. I mean, it's okay. You'll write more songs. You'll make, if you want to, and you'll make another record. I mean, that's why I stopped playing live, a decade ago. Well, was because I didn't enjoy playing live, and I was just like, well, then why do it?
Fantastic segue. I appreciate that. Did you ever tour? You had a band for Feel It. Did you ever tour for this record? Did you ever tour for any of your other records where it was just you?
No. I mean, we played, I don't know how many New Speedway shows there were as that lineup. I know that we played a handful of shows. We did a show opening up when Swerve Driver got back together. We played with them and Adam Franklin and those guys. And we did a handful of local shows. And again, having been in a band for a decade prior where it was all about playing shows and touring and stuff, I just said to myself, I don't like this. I never liked touring. I always wanted to be Brian Wilson more than I wanted to be Jerry Garcia. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like stay in the studio and make cool shit and, whatever. But, the punk rock ethic is literally, the get in the van.
Get in the van. Yep.
And so for my entire life, I started touring when I was like 17 or 18 years old. And I did that until I was in my 30s or like early 30. And like, I was just like, this doesn't work. It didn't work for me then, but you did it because it was something you were supposed to do so you could, quote unquote, make it. And then you don't make it. And then you go, I like sleeping in my bed with my girlfriend. I don't like sleeping on some chump's floor.
Right.
And I shouldn't say chump because he's very graciously given us the room
I
to
understand what you
sleep
mean.
in.
I understand.
But, on some floor in Allston, Massachusetts or Pittsburgh, PA or wherever, and then get up, hope that no one robbed your van, and then drive to the next $150 show. And like, it was not about money. It's just about, we lost money every time. And it's like, it's just not. So it's like, well, again, if there's no threat of success and you don't really care that much about visibility, then, and it's about making the thing as a thing, I just do that at home.
You do what you want.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I never was part of a huge. I never was in a band where we were doing a 2-week tour up and down the East Coast or anything like that. I've played shows out in other cities, but you play close to home. If I'm gonna play a show, I'm gonna go and hit DC or Baltimore or Philly, and that's what I'm gonna do because I don't want to spend all that time in a van.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't probably even mine. We rented it, or whatever the case may be. So I get it. It was never an appeal for me either. But
We're also like really super duper loud. Like Speedway, we had multiple. I had 2 full guitar stacks, and when there's a quote, I think it might have been, it's probably Jay Mascis or somebody, but someone's like, the worst combination in the world is when you're too loud and you don't have any fans. And that was the case. But, I didn't want to turn it down. I wanted to be a very, very loud, abrasive band. And that doesn't work well unless, there's a sold out place for you. So it was like, nah, that's okay. Records are as loud as you turn them up. So
I turn mine. I live in a house now, so I turn them up pretty loud. I don't have to worry about the neighbors the way I used to.
Good, like I said, good fences make good neighbors.
That's
good
true.
Headphones. Good headphones. Good
And
neighbors.
I have decent headphones, but I also like to just turn up my music. So even at my age.
Yeah, same.
Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I'm just trying to go over and see if there's anything else I've missed. But this conversation, Rocco, has been really great.
Yeah, man, I've had a lot of fun.
I have too. I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about this record again. For all the $10 records that I buy that I'm just not into, it's so great when I find a record that is, again, no offense meant, but $4. And
$4.
And I get it home, and I was like, "This is a fantastic $4 purchase. This is just right up my alley." And that's exactly why I do what I do. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, man. It's been a lot of fun.
It has.
And going back and even thinking about this record and having to like pick my own brain about like what did we do there and stuff like that has been an interesting trip for myself down the memory hole and a lot of fun.
Glad I could help. All right, we'll talk to you later.
Cheers. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Well, that just about does it for this episode of Cutouts. I'd like to thank Rocco for being on the show and having a great conversation about everything we talked about. I'd like to thank you, the listener, for being a part of this community and listening to conversations like the one that Rocco and I had today. I'd like to thank Craig and Brian and Brendan for constantly being an ear for me to bend about the way this podcast can improve and suffer. I'd like to thank Jody for the artwork and Stacy for the web hosting and my beautiful bride, Megan, for putting up with me buying a lot of records. It's just an ever-growing collection that she has no desire to even be a part of, and I appreciate her letting me have that little part of joy in my life. If you would like to follow what I'm doing on my journey musically, you can do so at Instagram. I'm at Cutouts Podcast. You can also go to Patreon and support me, patreon.com/cutoutspodcast. And you can also contact me and let me know what your cat's name is. That's at cutoutspodcast@gmail.com. And with that, good night, everybody.